Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. And we look at today's business and news, and also later on we'll also be talking to Daniel Maingi, who is the GM for Pension Division at Minet, Kenya, as we look at savings for retirement. Remember, the new NSSF new rates are supposed to be implemented this month, and employers have been asked to comply with the NSSF Act 45 of 2013, which is set to increase monthly contributions from 200 shillings to 2,160 shillings. But before we delve into that, let's hear from our guest of this afternoon. What do you think about this launch of the Dongo Kundu, or rather the Taifa gas plant, which is a 16 billion shillings plant? Do you think it will bring down the cost of gas right here in the country?
Wow. I think from what I said, that's quite a progressive thing. Anytime we are setting up factories, that's quite good, because one, it means there's employment, and number two, of course, if we are getting gas from locally here, it means really the prices will come down.
Thank you. Now going back to our topic of discussion this afternoon, we have seen the new rates. They are here with us now. I'd like you to tell us, maybe break down for the Kenyan out there, how the payslip might look like now that Kenyans will be deducted 2,160 shillings.
Wow. Again, the NSSF Act. One, let me start with the background. Remember, this is an act that was enacted on December 27th, 2013, and was meant to be implemented on 10th of January, 2014. However, ever since, times have changed. There are several court cases, and it was initially upheld, and then it was meant to be implemented in May of 2014. But again, people went to court, again it was stopped, and therefore all the way 10 years down the lane, the courts have now determined the case, and therefore the act is implementable from this February, because from 3rd of February this month, that's when the courts determined that there was nothing wrong with the act, and therefore should be implemented. I can also qualify that to say we still have a few groupings which are still in court, who've gone to Supreme Court to challenge that. But for now, as it stands, the NSSF Act of 2013 is supposed to be implemented, effective the payroll of this month going forward.
Okay.
Yes.
NSSF, when you look at NSSF, collects about 12 billion shillings annually in members' contribution. Maybe how are these funds invested?
Wow, every pension fund that is registered within the country is supposed to follow specific guidelines that are set by the Retirement Benefits Authority, and NSSF does not fall off from that listing. NSSF is part of the registered funds within the country, and therefore NSSF is supposed to invest in accordance to the regulations or the guidelines that have been given, and therefore they are in the bond market, they're in the property, they're in the stock market, and several other, even PE funds that have recently become a key thing, and it's a big discussion within the pension sector and any other investment discussions. So really, it's a whole bouquet of investments. Yes.
So how will the payslip, let's go back to the first, how will the payslip look like for, let's say, Kenyans who are earning maybe 3,000 to 6,000? Maybe break it down for us.
Right, yeah, there's been worry in regards to implementation of this act, and what I would say is there's what within the act is called a progression table. The progression table ensured that year on year, at least for the first 4 years, the implementation was going to be in a very graduated manner, just to ensure that your payslip is not hit so hard. I'm not speaking for the NSSF, but really it is what they provided for. And therefore, for the first year, they actually capped salaries at 18,000. Because they separated these within what they call a tier 1 and tier 2 kind of contribution. Within the tier 2, this is where if you already have a private occupational scheme, then you can apply to the Retirement Benefits Authority and you contract out of that, and therefore you can send that contribution to your private scheme. Otherwise, tier 1 is going to be mandatory, and this will continue for as long as the act is in place. And therefore, in terms of, you're asking the question about how will the payslip look like. The maximum contribution is 1,080 by the employee, where the employer is supposed to contribute the same. In a nutshell, it's a 6% contribution from one salary. The employer contributes the same, a total of 12%. Meaning 1,080 by the employee, 1,080 by the employer, making the total of 2,160. Yeah, so end of this month, if you have no pension fund arrangement at all, then your payslip should lose 2,000, rather 1,080, and the employer will contribute the same.
Now, will this move maybe encourage saving for retirement among the employee? Because then again, we are looking at the informal settlements also, which are not covered by NSSF unless you're doing it voluntarily.
Yeah, the informal sector has always been a challenge, and as a pension industry, we've always asked ourselves, what would be the best way of encouraging every Kenyan to actually make a saving? And if you look at what the government is also doing, they're trying to get everyone into savings. Even the Hustler Fund has got a connotation on pension saving. But again, back to this fund, you see, a 12% contribution is something good in terms of if you're trying to secure your future, and it's a good start. 6% minimum, 6% by the employer and the employer. However, the informal sector, there are various options which are there, and even the Act itself is also trying to ensure, even if you're not employed in a corporate entity, then as an individual, whether you do business, whether you are doing any form of juakali, you're farming and all that kind of a thing, there are those various options that are there. There's what you call individual pension plans that are being run by several entities. I come from the pension industry. I work with Minet Kenya Financial Services. We offer pension administration, and I can assure you our individual pension plan book has really grown, and especially in the last 5 years. So there's a lot of interest into securing one's future. I think what we need to do is just ensure that the discussion is alive, and most people, majority of people, and especially those who are not in the formal sector, we also get to reach to them, get the education to them. But again, interesting, even those who are in the formal sector, we've seen very few corporates who are running pension arrangements. Okay? In fact, if you talk to the RBA, the regulator, the Retirement Benefits Authority, they'll tell you we have less than 2,000 registered pension funds in this country. How many employers are in Kenya? Okay? So really, there's a lot to be done when it comes to the pension savings, and I'm happy that the president himself has also been talking about savings. So I think what would be a key challenge would be probably the timing that the Act has gone through, because majority of Kenyans are saying they're struggling, and it's true.
Yes. And then again, that's where it comes in. Where do how do we manage the current needs while we have the needs for the future?
All right. We really have to strike a good balance. We must live for sure. Whether things are bad or not, everyone must look for a daily bread. But as you look for it, remember, tomorrow we may also find ourselves in a situation where economically we are doing badly. The rains have really, of course, they've really failed for some time now. And the challenge is, for as long as there are no rains, there's no food. And if there's food, it's quite expensive, like we're experiencing at the moment. So the question is, if we don't start saving even the little from the little that we are earning today, what will make us save tomorrow, even when there's abundance? You know, at times it's a culture change that we do require as a nation, as different states would like to do it. We need to just educate the larger population that whatever little you are earning, whether from your business or even if you are employed from a formal sector, you need to always remember to keep something small. In fact, when we are training members, we always say the earliest you need to save is from your first payslip. When you got the first job at the age of 21, 25, that is when you should have started saving. So this act of NSSF should not have caught anyone by surprise.
So what's the place for the Kenyan private pension schemes? And then again, how do we merge the two?
All right. The private sector, if you already have a private pension arrangement, what the act has done is it has allowed the tier 2 contribution, which is the higher or the bigger contribution, you can apply to the Retirement Benefits Authority to contract out of the tier 2 contribution. What is mandatory to go to the NSSF is the tier 1, the smaller contribution, which from the progression table is actually about 360 shillings from 200 for the first year. The second year it will move to 420 shillings. But the tier 2, where we have like the first year, 720 shillings, that you can apply and it continues flowing to your private arrangement where most people feel they're comfortable. As Minet, we have so many pension arrangements, which are privately registered and run, and majority of those employers, we are assisting them in making the applications to contract out. So let me just say, overall, it's a win-win situation. Because if you have an arrangement, you will just contract out and continue with your private sector.
Okay. As we come to a close, maybe Section 21 of the NSSF Act provides that if an employer participates in or opts to establish or participate in a private pension or social scheme, the employer is obliged to pay Tier 1 contribution. That's what you're explaining, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Correct. So that is actually what I'm trying to say. The NSSF Act came with the option that if you have a private arrangement, and for as long as it is superior to the NSSF, then make the application to contract out. However, my view would have been this. I think, there's also a bureaucracy within this same thing. What would my preference would have been, if you are already running a private scheme that is superior to the NSSF, and you are registered with Retirement Benefits Authority, it should have been an automatic exemption. We don't need to start making the application, all right? But otherwise, for now, that's the act. But from where I sit, I think it's progressive. We may have our fears as people within the country because of historical issues of NSSF, but my positivity, what I find positive about this whole arrangement is that majority of Kenyans would start saving, whether private or through the NSSF.
Thank you so much, Daniel Mainga, who is the GM for Pension Division at Minet, Kenya. They're explaining to us the NSSF new rates and how they will be implemented. Remember, from your payslip this month, you will be deducted more than 200 shillings for the NSSF as you save for the future.